Seen It podcast, the only podcast called Never Seen It that's worth listening to. With us tonight, Mr. Arnie, the one-man party, aka Arnold Callego is here. Mr. Daily Dares, aka Filipino Grigio, aka Alex Callego, the brothers Callego. Mr. Milkman America, aka Chris, is here tonight. And in return, special guest, Lisa Counterman. Welcome back, Lisa. Nice to see you. And then there's me, Boots Too Big, aka Adrian De La Torre. And tonight we're discussing the 2005 Jim Jarmusch film, Broken Flowers.
Dear Don, years ago I had a son, your son, no return address.
You have no idea who this is from?
Nope.
Congratulations, you're a father.
Starring a who's who. We got Bill Murray. I almost said Bill Murphy. Gosh darn it. We got Bill Murray. We got Sharon Stone, Jessica Lange, Tilda Swinton, Francis Conroy. The list goes on. Chloe Sevigny. Is it Sevigny or Savini?
Savini.
Savini, okay. I always screw up last names. But yeah, that's the movie, Broken Flowers. It's about a man, the introverted Don Johnston, not to be confused with Don Johnson. Don Johnston receives an anonymous letter from an ex-lover informing him that he has a son who may be looking for him. A freelance sleuth neighbor motivates Don to embark on a cross-country search for his past flames, seeking answers. And of course, how could I not mention Jeffrey Wright? Jeffrey Wright as his neighbor, who is like so, like, no matter what Jeffrey Wright is in, he always brings a good performance. I don't care how bad the movie or show is. He's always great. But yeah, this was your movie. And I think we chose this because of the spinometer that Justin did. But this was your movie, I believe, that you put on the spreadsheet. Tell us, why did you choose Broken Flowers?
I love Bill Murray. I love Jim Jarmusch. I know he's a very polarizing kind of director as far as the craft is concerned, but like I do feel that a lot of like actors and like people who love film really love Jim Jarmusch and want to work with him. He's like just a sought after auteur. He's not everybody's cup of tea, and I warned everybody because ahead of time because of that. However, I love his style. It's like, I will admit, like, it is hit or miss. I love Ghost Dog. I love this film. I watched Limits of Control. That one was a tough one to watch, but I watched it in the theaters, and it was kind of like late at night. Limits of Control was a good one, like regardless of, and that one also stars Bill Murray. Broken Flowers it's an interesting watch because I feel like when I not discovered it, but when I was introduced to it, I was kind of going through some, like, breakup type stuff too. Anybody can relate to this. Like if you've been in a relationship and have gone through like a breakup and like kind of like being introspective of like what your past was like, when like what was the effects of like every single relationship that you were in, and how did it like affect not just you but your partner at the time. And you see him go through like what he like each kind of iteration almost of each romantic partner that he had, and I really like that.
I really like how every partner that he visited, the meeting got shorter and shorter and less intimate as he went along. Like Sharon Stone, it was super intimate. First of all, he gets there and and I'm mostly clear on this. Was she her biological daughter or her stepdaughter? I was not clear on that.
That was Sharon Stone's biological daughter. Okay.
He gets there and he meets her first, and then she's very flirty. She's very like, that kind of way. And then at one point he's like waiting for Sharon Stone to get home from work, and she like walks into the living room naked. And I was like, oh,
very nonchalant,
very nonchalant with the phone and everything. I was not expecting that. And then Sharon Stone gets home, and I thought it was going to be like, I thought they were going to blow up or something, but no, like she's like so smitten with him, it seems. And that was the most intimate person that he went back and saw, like, and the next morning he's in bed with her and stuff. So I thought that was a really interesting sequence of events, the way they put that together.
A friend of mine was in a very similar situation where, then it was like a date, and then they went back to like his place or her place, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But then he was, I think it was their first date, and then he was like, waiting, sitting on the couch in the living room, and she was like, "Oh, I'm just gonna go and get something," but then she casually just walked in like completely naked, like I think went to the kitchen and was like, and he was also like really thrown off.
Yeah.
And that they didn't really date that much.
And you know what's interesting though is that Bill Murray is sort of famous for his like reactions to a lot of things, and he said that this is his like best acting role that he's ever done, and he's kind of like dismayed by the fact that it's like not one of his most famous roles, and yet this is the one that he's most proud of. And I was like, that's so interesting. But yeah, Chris, I feel like you had something to say. You wanted to say something.
Oh, I was just gonna comment that was definitely the warmest interaction, and I thought that was interesting that the warmest got the most attention.
Yeah,
just not start it all off.
Yeah,
and then like as we got like quirkier or darker, they got shorter and shorter, and it's to a degree, this is like a little bit of a mystery movie,
right?
And so you have this detective hat on, and you're getting like these mixed bag of clues the whole time, and it's sort of like if you haven't seen it, it's a tad bit of a spoiler, but it's got nothing to do with the mystery whatsoever.
Right. And I love the way it's framed in the beginning, where it starts off with the postal carrier delivering mail, and he gets this mysterious pink envelope with a woodpecker stamp, and that pink is a visual motif throughout the whole movie. And I thought, oh, every time we see pink, we're going to get more and more clues as to what the mystery is, as far as solving it. And then no, we never really get that. He never gives us that release, that catharsis. And I was like, I respect that, Jim Jarmusch. I see your game. I respect that, because in any Hollywood movie, it would have been like, the very end, he would have discovered who the son is and who the mom was. But no, Jim Jarmusch, and spoiler alert, we're getting ahead of ourselves. But yeah, Jim Jarmusch, he pulls back. He really does. But I respect the hustle. I really do. Lisa, what are your thoughts on that?
Same thing, spoiler alert. I was, at the end, it took me a while to get into it. And then we got to the end and I was like, okay, maybe not. And then he gives you that one little last thing when that kid drives by and looks at him, and I was like, oh, okay. And then it ended and I was like, I literally stood up and went, you're kidding me, right? I was like, okay, now I want 15 more minutes and explanation, and I want something to be done. But I was going to comment because it was interesting to watch Bill Murray, because he had so many scenes that were done so well with no words, not really a change of facial expression, nothing, just absolute statue staring. And it amazes me because anytime I'm asked to do an audition and there's no lines, no nothing, and it's very subtle expression changes, that is the hardest thing to do. So watching him sit there, and somehow I could tell what was going on in his brain just by like nothing. And, there's a lot of those long scenes where he's sitting on the couch in his living room and he's just kind of looking, staring into space. And I keep saying, gosh, he does that furrowed brow really well. I don't know what it is about him, but that furrowed brow can be anger, it can be embarrassment, it can be anxiety, and somehow I can tell from him. And so I thought he did an amazing job. It was a really quirky movie, and at the first couple minutes I was like, meh, but the more it went along, I thought it was really well done, and it was subtle. It's one of those movies that didn't come in with, all the marquee lights, but I'm glad that it was suggested. That's not one that I had on my list to even watch.
Definitely. I 100% agree with everything. Alex?
Jarmusch doesn't go the easy route. He never does. I read an article that kind of explained, like, went into this review. It's like Jarmusch never goes the easy route, but he's hardly in a hurry either. Instead, he slows down the pace and invites us to observe how a guy like Don, who over the course of the movie reveals himself to be a charming man nursing a soul that is fractured on some fundamental level, was capable of affecting all these different women's lives. And I think that's the beauty of and why it works so well with Jim Jarmusch's style. If you notice his edits and the way he cuts to scenes, he does very simple ones. He does this one thing where he just fades out and fades in. You don't see that a lot. It's a very, very simple editing thing, but it's so well done, and it just gives you that point where it gives you a moment to take a breath and kind of digest what you just went through.
It feels like he's purposely let's transition because we're going from a chapter to the next chapter, and he's it's a nice soft transition, and it works. It's simple. It's very simple. I think by 2005 those kinds of transitions were already out of style, but he's like, no, I'm going to give you a nice little chapter to chapter visual transition.
He's very old school like that.
Very old school.
And if you see it in a lot of his films, the way he does things.
Yeah. Chris?
Yeah, just to add on to the directing and overall just the entirety of the movie, everything from behind the camera to in front. This is such a seasoned film that if you don't know what you're looking at, it can seem like such a basic movie with not much going on.
Yeah.
And I kind of equate it to, sorry, it's going to be a sports analogy, but you'll see sometimes, like, especially like football or boxing, you'll see some of these like really experienced fighters or really experienced athletes. They don't have wasted movements. Like they just don't, in order to compete at a high level with like the young bucks and whatnot, they have to know exactly where to move and how to move because they just don't have that sort of like that level to their game anymore. And in so many ways, I feel like from the directing to like even like the music to the acting from each actor, not even just Don, like obviously Don has to be the perfect cast, which they did with Bill Murray. And I agree that this is a perfect film in that sense. But with everything being so nuanced and so simple, any misstep is highlighted, and because it is such a simple, practically no action in this movie besides the first X, that it's on a surface level so basic, but as you appreciate and the patience that you can have with this movie, if you just let it settle in and you just keep an eye out, there's so many smart little things, everything from a furrowed brow to a pink motif that never gets revealed, but just enough to keep you interested in a movie that is relatively boring. Like, if you think about it, like, even during boring scenes, you're like hunting for stuff in the background or upon first entrance to a very basic, like, these are just homes. This is a basic car. What's he say? He says something about like, I'm just a stalker in a Hyundai or something. I'm just
a stalker in a Ford Taurus. Yeah.
Yeah. That is so like, it's so perfect in so many ways, but it can be so overlooked so quickly and so easily.
It's a funny movie. It's very subtly funny, but it's a very funny movie throughout the whole thing, by the way. Alex?
Jim Jarmusch also directed The Dead Don't Die. And that's a zombie film, a horror film. And it was kind of unexpected to see him do like a horror film. But here's the thing why I think it was perfect for him to do a horror film.
With Bill Murray as well, by the way.
Yeah, Bill Murray as well. Oh, Chloe Savini was in that one too.
And Adam Driver.
Yeah, Adam Driver. But anyways, like,
Tilda Swinton.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing about like Bill Murray though too. He has such like high caliber actors and actresses who want to repeatedly work with him. Yeah. But going back to why he's so good at he was like unexpectedly such a good choice to direct a horror film is because if you look at this film, right? You're watching this film and he's going into these people's homes and he's like trying to meet. And in horror, you kind of like have this thing where you're watching. It's like this thing of misdirection, right? But so you're watching this thing take place, but then there's this underlying current that you have this feeling that something bad might happen within that scene, and you kind of feel that in every single scene where he meets with his exes, and you kind of like. Oh wait, is that Sharon Stone's scene where you see like a race car driver husband and you're like, is he gonna come home and like see this guy in her like, and then you realize that like, but you don't know that until later on. Sharon Stone reveals that he's dead, and so it's kind of like a sigh of relief. But then there's still this like, well, what about the other exes? Is there something crazy going to happen? So you're kind of like waiting on the peripherals, but you're still kind of misdirected by what's taking place in front of you. And I think that's such a skill that he has, that why it's so well done. And if you think about it, why he was good to do Dead Don't Die.
Definitely. Arnold?
Yeah, I love how this movie, I had never seen it before. But
you don't say.
Going into it, I had no idea that it was gonna be kind of like a mystery movie, like, and as you guys were talking about it, I did find myself like, oh, there's pink. Oh, like looking for little clues, because that was such a really great point, Chris, that you mentioned that there was a lot of, it was very slow pace, a lot of quiet moments, but it allowed you to scan through and like look at different things at the shots of where he is, where they're going, different colors, and yeah, murder. I mean, not murder, but like mystery kind of movies is like a a genre that my wife absolutely loves, and we both watched it together last night, and I know she really enjoyed it. Maybe it was a little slow pace for her, but
Arnold, I
it was
want
a
to
little.
ask you because, and we'll get into each of the ex partners because they're also interesting and unique in their own way. But Arnold, let me ask you: if you got a mysterious pink letter in the mail, how many exes would you have to go back and like talk to? Like, is it one, two, three, four, five? Like, how many are we talking? Like, would that be a odyssey for
Oh,
you, Arnold?
I didn't really have too many like girlfriends growing up.
Well, there you go.
Um,
The logistics would work out in your favor then, I think.
well, when I was a like a teenager and still living at home with, like middle school, high school, I didn't really have a girlfriend or anything. I didn't have a girlfriend or a boyfriend,
Same. Yeah.
but
Not a
I don't
boyfriend
think my
either.
parents would have let me.
Right.
But there were girls that I would talk to and stuff. So I don't know, maybe just like a handful of them,
Yeah.
couple handfuls of them,
A
a
couple
couple
handfuls.
dozen handfuls of them. No, just
A
kidding.
couple dozen handfuls of them. Alex?
I think the term we should be really using is methodical when we talk to his,
Methodical is a
when we
great word.
talk about
Yes.
his Jim Jarmusch's style.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like it's slow, but it's methodical. Like he's not
That's a great
trying
point.
to make it a slow movie. It's all intentional.
And we should
And
be using the word sexy when we're describing Bill Murray in this.
yeah,
Just
exactly.
want to make
Especially.
that point
Absolutely,
as well.
absolutely.
Well, for me, it's Jeffrey Wright, but yes, second on Bill Murray. You know, I think people would say it feels slow because also, like, it came out in 2005. I think 2005 versus 2026, the pacing of movies, no matter what genre, has gotten so much faster nowadays. And I think people will look at this and yeah, they would complain. But back then, I feel like this would have been a normal pace. It's not even that long. I don't even think it's 2 hours long. But I want to talk about each ex partner. Let's start with Sharon Stone really quick. What I really appreciated about that scene when they're having dinner with her and her daughter, there's like, I thought at first I thought it was kind of an awkward quietness. But then, like, as they cut to each of them looking at him, they're both like smiling. They're both like appreciating that he's there. Like Sharon Stone's character is very much like, I don't know, she seems so happy for him to be there. And then I realized, oh, I think I'm just like projecting my own feelings. I don't think this is awkward at all. Like this is probably the most wholesome moment that he has in the whole movie. What do you think about that, Chris?
I'm in the same boat. I thought it was awkward at first as well. But like as again, just like with this movie, the longer you sit with it, the more like you put the pieces together. Again, it is so, to your point, methodical because these women just lost their father and their husband. And so they probably haven't had a man come into the house. So like there's just probably going to be like this natural weird energy of this random man coming back into the mother's into Laura's life, and then the daughter's got this weird like mystery father figure that's coming in. So there's probably just like a lot of weird emotions naturally coming up because you have this like rekindling slash just kind of like a nice distraction, because I would imagine there's probably a lot of like heavy emotions that family was dealing with prior to where we come in with Bill Murray, right? So I could imagine that there's just a whirlwind of like not a lot of dialogue because they're internally trying to figure out all of these things and completely enamored by Bill, or
I
Don,
agree.
I should say.
And it's interesting because after the dinner scene, they wake up the next day, they're in bed together. And I thought, oh no, maybe she's going to regret it. Maybe he's going to regret it. Maybe there's going to be like another, I was expecting like a blow up. I kept expecting a blow up each time. And I guess maybe that's just the Hollywood way of thinking. But no, like he leaves the house and she's in her pink bathrobe and she just kind of sees him to the door. And then they both kind of, and then the daughter's in a bikini and then she's smiling and saying bye to him and stuff. And I was like, okay, I wonder what the next one's going to be like. And the next one is Frances Conroy, who, by the way, is like, has been in so many movies. And I always forget that I always forget, but she's like in so much stuff. And then whenever she pops up in a movie, I'm like, oh, it's Frances Conroy. And she's the next one, and she is, I guess, just like a suburban housewife, right? He gets her house, and this one feels a lot less personal. I almost felt like Bill Murray felt like a door-to-door salesman or something. Like the dynamic he had with her was a lot different. Like the vibes immediately shifted. And I wanted to ask, we'll go around the room. Lisa, what did you think about his interaction with Frances McConaughey's character?
So I actually got, and I don't know if I just read too much out of this, but I felt like she was in maybe a unhappy marriage, maybe an abusive marriage. She seemed very timid.
Mm.
When the husband comes in and he kind of strokes her hair and makes
Christopher
a comment
McDonald,
about,
who was
yeah, well,
also
and
great.
yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, when he strokes her hair and he is, saying, "Oh, my little hippie girl," she kind
Oh,
of,
yeah,
if you notice, she just does this flinch, like, "Don't touch me."
I didn't pick up
And
on that. That's
yeah,
interesting.
and it was a very awkward touch and her reaction and the the eye exchange between her and Bill Murray. I don't know. I felt almost like there was a deeper, like she was trying to tell him something like I'm not happy, I'm in trouble or something. And I almost felt like when he walks out of the room and he goes, "I took that picture, didn't I?" And she kind of does this. He sort of laughs and rolls his eyes, and I felt like that was his way of saying, "Okay, now I'm comfortable." And if you notice, the husband, when he sits back down, he does this quick glance and sees the flowers, and you can sort of see this. I could feel the tenseness in the room of like, "Oh, who gave you those flowers?" And I was waiting for the blow up there.
Wow, I did not pick up on any of those nuances. I will be honest. That's so great that you bring that up. Christopher McDonald, I thought he was just when he brought the picture out, I thought he was just like fucking with him, like, oh, like I know you took this picture, but I'm married to her now, type of thing. But you're saying there's like an even more subtle level of like there's something fishy in marriage.
Yeah, I mean, she
Wow.
just kept, she
Yeah.
seemed super awkward and
Yeah.
I didn't feel like it was awkward with Bill Murray. I
Mm,
almost felt like she was feeling very uncomfortable and awkward with her husband.
that's
But when
interesting.
she did that little flinch when he touched her hair, it was like this don't touch me kind of thing. And if you go back and watch, Bill Murray notices it. He doesn't
That's
react,
interesting.
but he notices it and there's this awkward like, I wonder if this is the relationship that he's gonna like save her. And and in my mind the romantic went down the path of like he's gonna sweep her out of there and in his
Mm,
very dry way rescue her.
mm.
But I thought it was actually really endearing that this man that seemed to have no personality was clearly like in this relationship with all these women and affected them in some way.
Yeah.
So I thought that was actually pretty endearing.
That is great insight. Clock it, clock it. That is not that really seriously. That is great. I did not pick up on any of those cues. I just thought she was like, oh, just kind of like an awkward, desperate housewife, and I didn't see those little nuances. So thank you for bringing that up, Alex.
So the way I also I agree with Lisa, but I also do see it as if the husband was insecure because she had probably talked about him and probably at great length about how great the relationship was. It's over, so like, and the possibility of him ever coming back into her life was like slim to none, right? But now he walks in there, and now he's like this boom of like insecurity for the husband is like just triggered. And I feel like that's where the awkwardness came in. Like she probably knew that her husband was coming in, so eventually, and that's why at the very beginning you see this sort of like tension a little bit because like she probably still has feeling for him, for one, but two, like she also understood that like in her mind, yeah, it was never gonna see him again, and she just had to move on. And here's the interesting thing about this. I can't remember where I read it, but like they had they had described this film as Don Juan DeMarco, and they it's very heavily.
Yeah.
You see all the movie Don Juan is in the on TV.
Isn't he like
and
a famous lover boy character?
Yeah, it's a story
Right.
about like a famous lover who's just kind of like can like win women over like very easily. But this is Don Juan in his midlife crisis of like discovering,
I like that.
sort of stuff. He's his most recent lover leaves him because he has yet to grow
That's right. We didn't even
cast.
talk about that. The movie
Yeah,
opens with him
Julie
getting
Delpy,
dumped.
right?
Julie Delpy, yeah.
Julie Delpy, like
What
one
does
of my
she say?
favorites.
Like, what? I can't remember. She says something on her way out. I can't remember what it was.
I can't remember it either. I
But
wanted to watch it again last night, but I could.
Didn't they repeat it a couple times? Like,
Oh yeah,
even,
throughout the movie.
I think, yeah. I know what you're talking about. I can't remember.
But Arnold, did you have something?
Oh yeah. Well, with this Conroy, it really did feel like there was something weird about her relationship. What was it? It was her husband, right?
Yeah, played by Christopher McDonald. Who, by the way, he's so... Chris, you said it perfectly. Every actor in this movie is perfectly casted. Christopher McDonald is so good at playing the smarmy kind of jackass, like you love to hate type of character. I really love his role.
Arnold, didn't the food look weird too?
It
Wait,
did.
what was that food? It was
like really shaped weird. Like the chicken was like cut like to
perfect square.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a cake, little rice cake.
Yeah.
Or
and the
something.
carrots were like perfectly circular.
It all looked raw.
The chicken was like square. Yeah.
It has to represent like the plain suburbanness that they're living in. Sorry, Arnold, I keep cutting you off.
Oh, no worries. Bill Murray, he stabs like the 3 pieces of carrots, and he's like reluctantly like and stuffs it in his mouth. That was funny. But the husband, he remembered. He was like, oh, like when she mentioned the name, he was like, oh, wasn't he a former flame? And then there's a lot of like really silent moments, like quiet moments, but just a lot of. Then you do. I did sense that as well. Like, oh, there's something up with their relationship. Like, I almost felt like, is he gonna rescue her from this relationship or something, or is he gonna help her to realize something? I was almost waiting for her to do the hand signal. Isn't the hand signal like like that? You know,
she orders that special drink that women order at bars whenever they're trying to signal to the bartender that they're in trouble. I forget what it's called. There's some drink that it's a fake drink, but if you order it at a bar, it's supposed to signal to the bartender that you're like in trouble.
Adrian, we'll have to tell the research team.
Yeah, we'll have them look into it. Chris, I believe you had something.
Yeah, I'll try to keep this quick. There was like 3 points during that specific X. Even before the husband gets there, there is a level of tension there that we don't know where that tension's coming from. Is it between them or what's going on? And then you get like the inclination of like, oh, she's still married. Oh, is she gonna come? He comes home, and then he does. So like there, even before Christopher, the boyfriend or the husband comes home, there's already that level of tension that's bubbling. And then you get the answer for, oh, it's him. He's the guy that does that.
Doesn't he ask her or the husband at some point? He says like, any kids? And then the husband answers like, no. And then something else is
sensitive
said.
subject or something like that.
Yeah, that was really awkward.
Yeah, she says something about she didn't feel like she would be a good enough mom to his daughter.
Yeah, you could cut the tension in that dinner scene with a knife. And I don't know. I thought it was interesting because, like, on the surface, it looks like the perfect life. Like, she's in a nice big house in the suburbs, and she's like, she looks like they're, I don't know, that they're at least upper middle class, I guess, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah, for sure, upper middle.
But there's like you guys have said, there's this weird underlying tension that you can really, and I did pick up on the tension, but I did not even consider for a moment that, oh, maybe he's abusive or something. I don't know. Maybe it's because like Chris McDonald is, like I said, he's so good at playing like the smarmy jackass type that I thought, oh, he's probably just a kind of a dick. But who knows?
To that point, like if you think of even not Waterboy, what's the golf movie?
Happy Gilmore.
Happy Gilmore.
Yeah,
he plays he does a very insecure man very well, of someone who's supposed to have power and stature.
Yeah,
actually being a very insecure man, and that carries into this. Like he does it great in this movie.
Yeah,
and like to like land the plane. The first X has a lot of like this kindled passion that kind of never died out, and then to contrast that, this X shows that like she was a hippy dippy. Like that's the point of like when they had that relationship, they were very like lovey groovy type of love, and to contrast that to like how stifled that passion is in her life, to the extent like she doesn't even feel comfortable talking. let alone like just being present in that relationship. And like you said, Don Wall in a middle life crisis comes in and kind of stirs up the pot a little bit. I'm like, yeah, she was a wild cat back in the day. What happened to her?
Thank you for that, Chris. And what happens after this? There's a little bit of a transition here in the sense of like, I think he calls.
Well, he goes into the hotel.
Yeah.
And then Winston calls him in the middle of the night, in like early morning.
How'd you know it was me? I took a guess. Or what does he say? I took a guess.
Yeah. And this is his best friend that's calling him too.
Yeah. So he goes back to the hotel, and then I feel like he talks to Winston, and he says something like, "Yeah, I'm done, man. I'm gonna go home," or something like that. And then Winston convinces him otherwise, doesn't he? Doesn't he tell him like, no?
I don't think he doesn't really convince him.
He doesn't really convince him.
He just
like Arnold, he presses him.
He presses his hips against him.
And I think that's when he makes the comment about the Taurus.
Oh, yeah. He's like,
which is perfect because you could not pick a more bland car for a bland scenario.
Yeah. And well, by the way,
Taurus.
Yeah, Winston, man, like you need a friend like Winston to plan out your trip, to do all the accommodations and logistics and everything.
Yeah, can we talk about him just for a second? Because like I feel like he deserves his own.
He really does. I love the little interactions that Bill Murray has with his daughters. Like there's a scene where he's just like playing tea time with one of his daughters. And he's just so casually like a part of their lives. He walks over to their house. He just walks right in, says hi to everybody.
Here's the thing that I had a discussion with one of my coworkers yesterday about how he watched this movie, and when it comes to dating, it's better to attract than to chase, and that's what Bill Murray does. He doesn't try to chase anybody down. He finds women, like he finds lots of women attractive. He sees that woman in the airport, very attractive, but she has zero interest in him. So he just like moves on. He finds Chloe Sevigny attractive, I'm sure. Like you see him like look at her, and like but he's not. He doesn't chase after. He attracts all these women, and that was something like I guess I brought it up because like I personally kind of connected with that too, because like I was kind of looking at my own life. I was like, oh wow, I pretty lucky. Like I haven't dated a lot, but like I think the women that I had been able to attract, it was easy. Like I didn't have to chase. The ones I chased were the difficult ones, like and never worked out. But the ones that I ended up in relationships with, it was just like so easy.
So you see yourself a little bit in Don Johnston. Yeah. It
just shows how he's quiet, he's introverted, but you look at how Winston's kids love him. A good person,
even
like somebody
Winston's
who
wife,
she's probably very attracted to him, like finds him very attractive. You see how she like talks to him.
Yeah, and Winston's like she's mine.
Yeah, and he gets like kind of a little slightly insecure, right? But like also like attractive men like are attractive people in general. I don't want to just say attractive men. Attractive people.
You don't just mean physically. You're talking like just attractive as like person.
Well, that's the thing though too. It's like it's not about like their looks either. Look at Bill Murray. He's not like the best looking guy in the world, but he's
got a certain aura about him.
Then that's the thing. His personality, his character. Like you look at him and you see how he interacts with those kids, and you know that he's a good person because the way he treats those kids like they're just people too, and he treats them like equals as well.
Good point.
He
doesn't treat them like kids. He treats them like he's that.
Remember when he walks into the room to go see Winston? He walks into Winston's office, but like one of Winston's kids is trying to reach for this toy that's on this desk, and he's like trying to, and then Don immediately stops, grabs the toy, and gives it to the kid, and then the kid's like, "Thanks, Don," like as if he's like his uncle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he's a good uncle type of person. You know what I mean? And
very
I think that's so beautiful. Like he's a truly attractive guy. He just probably has like in that article said, he's like a fractured part of himself that can't hold down a good relationship. I like that line.
What was the thing you said earlier? Don't chase, but attract, or what was it?
Don't chase, attract.
Okay, I'm gonna have to keep that in mind. That's a good one. Yeah, the great scenes with Winston and his family. I really like when Winston. This is still early on in the movie, he goes to his house and he's trying to convince him. He's got like a CD. He's like, I even burned you a CD to go with your trip and all that. And he puts it on, and Bill Murray's like, no, listen, I'm not going to do this. Drop it.
There's a constant theme in all his Jim Jarmusch's movies,
which is
the CD.
The CD.
Like in Ghost Dog, he puts a CD in the car. And there's actually, I think there's a specific song that plays in Broken Flowers as well as Ghost Dog.
I need to
when
revisit
he's driving
Ghost Dog.
around.
Yeah,
I believe so.
And what I love about that scene, not only did he burn him that music, which is also used as a motif throughout the movie because he's listening to it in his car, but he's talking to him. And he's like, "Drop the subject. I'm not doing it." And then Winston's like, "Okay, fine. You're not gonna do it." And they just stand there for a moment and they kind of side eye each other, and like Winston's gonna keep bringing it up, and then he does again. And Bill Murray's like, fine. And then, I don't know, it was such a small little moment, like in acting, just like that little side eye they do. Like they know each other so well, and he's just waiting for him to speak, and then he does. That's a great moment acting-wise.
Going back to the CD, I think I know which music that they also used.
Yeah, what was that called?
Ghost
I
Dog.
should probably look that up.
I mean, Ghost Dog, they did a lot of Wu-Tang, which, but I mean, I love Wu-Tang. But
you do love
I think
Wu-Tang.
it kind of had like
it's Ethiopian Jazz is the CD that he gives them, right?
Yeah,
and it's by a specific band, Maladu Artstaki. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's an Ethiopian jazz band that is a real band, I believe, and they
I
play
really
that.
love the soundtrack. By the way, it's really good.
Yeah, soundtrack's great.
Gotta check that out.
So what's the third ex-partner is Jessica Lange, who Jessica Lange is so great. Like, I've mostly seen her in American Horror Story. I know she's been in a ton of stuff over the years, but she is just so fantastic. And visiting her is even less personal than the previous two because he visits her at her work. And she's not a therapist. She's an animal communicator.
Yeah.
Did she start off as a lawyer?
Yeah.
I think so.
And her cat that comes in is also named Winston. That's what it was.
That's right. That's
the dog that died, right?
Yeah.
What was the guy remember when he gets there and there's a patient coming out with one of his, I don't know if it's a squirrel or a rabbit, and he's like talking to it. I forget what he said.
It was a rabbit.
Yeah, I feel like he walked out and he was like, "I'm so glad you told me this," or something like that. I about fell off the couch laughing at that. I was like, that would so be me. I'd be the one going to the animal communicator with my dogs. Like, I don't understand. They won't eat.
It sets the tone for that whole scene, and he goes in there, and Chloe Savini is the secretary. And like you said, Alex, he's kind of like checking her out, but like being cool about it. And she's kind of like catching him, eyeing her a little bit. And then he goes in to talk to Jessica Lange. And he's like, what does he say? Like, so you're an animal whisperer? She's like, no, I'm an animal communicator. Like, she's very clear about that. And yeah, I mean, let's talk about that. What did you think? Chris, I'll start with you. What did you think about Jessica Lange's character?
I thought it was really interesting. To have these different women have different things that we're kind of exploring through Bill's eyes. And kind of diving into the history without really diving, right? This is all very like reading between the lines in every scene.
Because we never actually get anecdotes of their relationships, by the way, with many of them.
At all. And so you're just kind of like trying to judge it literally based off this like weird tennis match that we're getting with each one. And with this one, I thought it was so interesting that boundaries were like the biggest thing that I was thinking of, because their relationship was when she was a lawyer. So she was more high profile in the sense of like my job and status and yada, yada, yada. Now she kind of has a kooky job, right? As far as being an animal communicator, but there's this level of, I know I can't let myself, or I'm not going to let you back in that sense. And she is even trying to sniff out like, why are you here? Like, I'm not letting you get an inch. So I'm going to stop you at every instance.
She wouldn't give him nothing. He's like, you want to go grab a drink? Oh, I don't drink. You want to go grab lunch? No, I don't think that's a good idea.
What a master of just like, nope, not doing it. Boom, that's yours. Nope.
Even a walk.
And you buy it because it's
like
Jessica Lange, and she's just that great of an actress. And she's not even nasty about it either, by the way. She's very like respectful.
Very
like,
healthy boundaries. Were just like standing firm in it, not being aggressive or overly assertive. It was just like, this is where I'm standing. No, like, shoot it straight with me. Whatever you're looking for, I'll
Yeah.
give you the answer. But that's it.
Does he ask her if she has kids? I can't remember. I thought he did ask her at some point.
I think
Yeah.
he asked almost every one of them.
What was her response to that? I think she just kind of like laughed and said no or something, right?
She had the daughter in Sweden.
The daughter and okay, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. But she hesitates for a long time. She looks at him and then says after a long period of wait that she has a daughter in Sweden. But then it just gets dropped. Like nothing
Yeah.
gets at, you know, and you're like, oh, it's interesting.
There's never a follow-up question. There's never a why. Why do you ask type of thing. Alex, I think you wanted to say something.
Well, I just found it interesting that like especially after their relationship, everybody seems to get like become fractured. Even Bill Murray, obviously, like he slowly throughout like his whole life dating all these different women, he never really truly heals himself. But he also like is probably like the cause of like some of these women's traumas. Like you look at Jessica Lange, for instance, she kind of brushes off the fact that she had a daughter in Sweden. But if you think about it too, like the fact that she kind of brushed it off and like is obviously not married anymore, she probably doesn't trust people anymore. And that's probably why she would probably
Why she talks to animals.
Yeah, she'll like rather talk to animals, and then the Chloe Savini's character is like like a protector.
Yeah.
Sorts, she like is like the gatekeeper of like of her heart in a sense. She knows his intentions, and like whether like she knows exactly what was going on. She knows, she gets the sense that there is some sort of romantic thing that happened between the two of them, and then she's like, you're not gonna hurt her again. That kind of like codependent relationship, in a sense that, or they're like Chloe Savini's protecting her, and for better or for worse, it works.
I agree. I like how much mileage he gets out of each of the ex partners of his. Like they all have their own one scene or sequence, and they're not throughout the whole movie. They're very siloed, but he still like gets so much mileage out of all of them, and it works out great. Arnold?
Didn't Chloe Savini also play the secretary for Patrick Bateman in American Psycho?
She did, in fact, play Patrick Bateman's secretary. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
the one girl he doesn't
kill
kill in that movie.
Oh yeah. She plays I wonder if she's played any other assistants in other movies.
I don't know, but she's been in a lot of stuff. She was in American Horror Story as well with Jessica
She was
Lange.
in Kids.
She was in Kids.
Oh.
She was in,
which was probably before American Psycho then, no?
Way before that, yeah. She was in Zodiac. I don't know what she was in Zodiac. Than that.
Well, I remember in American Psycho, Patrick Bateman, Christian Bale, he's like, don't wear that outfit again. Almost like making her like she's not attractive or anything, and then now this movie, she's
a boss girl. She's like, you got your next appointment. Should I tell him to wait? No, he's been waiting. Yeah, and then she's like, just tell him I'll be there in a minute and I'll walk you to your car. And then she walks Bill Murray to his car. And yeah, that's when they have that final push where he's like, you want to get a drink? No. You want to get some dinner? No. And that's pretty much it. That was kind of a quick one. Like they all get shorter and shorter. And so any more thoughts on Jessica Lange? Did you have any thoughts, Lisa? Anything else on that character?
The only thing I thought it was interesting because we don't really know. They don't say for the first ex. They don't talk about what she did. They talk about her husband was a race car driver, but did they say like does she work, or I don't think they did.
Yeah, they did. She's a organizational specialist.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Okay.
She organizes closets for people.
That's right. She did come with that basket. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting how diverse like each personality of each woman.
Yeah.
You kind of have her, and she kind of came across as this like passionate, kind of lover. That was her main personality, and clearly, they end up getting into bed together, and she's the only one that does that. But then you go to the next one who, is this very contained person who's stiff. And then you come to Jessica Lange, who was corporate and is now kind of flighty, being a, animal communicator. And then you go to the last one where, it's kind of like tough biker babe and everything. And I like how they each had their very different personality. It wasn't like, I feel like that was to show that he attracted all these diverse women. And he even, if you remember, goes into the flower shop, and that woman starts being, acting like she's attracted to him as well. Just from that brief interaction. It's kind of that Don Juan
Well,
of like,
it's the attraction thing.
Yep.
you
Yep.
know?
Yeah.
There's something
And,
to that,
and if,
Lisa, like unconventionally attractive men being attractive in their own way. Is there? I mean, from a woman's perspective, and this is why I like to have a woman's perspective on the show, because like Tony Soprano, right? Like James Gandolfini, he
Yeah.
had that kind of aura. Do you see that? Could you see that in real life with these types of
I
characters?
I do. I feel like I feel like I've always been throughout life more attracted to kind of the underdog, the person that's not outgoing and boisterous and has all these people around them, but that kind of quiet subtlety, the awkwardness that you find some, just as being attractive, because it's always nice to see that there's not a frailty, but that there's you're not invincible. And I feel like that's attractive, which I don't know if that makes
a
sense, but like,
vulnerability.
yeah, that
That makes
vulnerability.
sense.
And because, there are so many icons out there that you don't ever see them slip. You don't ever see them fall. And that's great for someone on a movie screen. But in real life, you want to know that there's some humility there. There is a vulnerability there. And I think that's why I kind of would see that. I don't know. I think I would also see Bill Murray and be like, I don't know, there's this weird like attractiveness about his quirky, odd behavior. And hopefully he's not a mass murderer
Yeah,
underneath.
well, there you go.
Yeah, yeah. But I think so. I think that there's a lot of women that, including myself, that are attracted to that, and not the, the person at the gym all the time like
The
this.
alpha
It's
male.
right, right. It's much more fulfilling to be, with someone, and it's more attractive to be around someone that has some, Achilles heel, because it's nice to know that, we're not just dating someone that's a statue. So
Right. That's
yeah.
great. Thank you for that.
Mention like what's also kind of very interesting too, in a storytelling sense, it crescendos, like the way like each character, each X comes. You got Sharon Stone's character, like it's kind of soft entry, right? You got like it's this nice wonderful like happening. They go, they hook up, and then
Yeah.
they go on their way. But then you get to the second one, it's like, oh, this is weird. This is when it starts to get weird. And like, not that the first one didn't have his
They were all weird in
curiosities.
their own way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but it got like more and more intense. Like, and when you get to Jessica Lange's character, she's very standoffish.
Yeah.
She's respectable in like how we were talking about, but she's very like, I have my boundaries. And then you get to like Tilda what's her name? Tilda
Swinton.
Swinton.
Yeah.
You get to like her character, and that's when you're like you're met with this sort of like, what do you want? Why are you here?
Very aggressive.
Very abrupt, and then like
and
she's
short.
Yeah, very short, but it's also
yeah.
like she means it to be short, because she's like,
Yeah.
what do you want to be? Why are you here? Tell me
Yeah.
why you're here. And like
Yeah.
once she gets the answer, she leaves.
Yeah.
And then she
That's
like starts screaming, and then her like whoever those guys
two
are,
guys.
they come by and like why are you hurting her? Like, why are you,
Yeah.
the sensitive woman? And then he like gets punched in the face and knocked out.
Punch right in the face.
Yeah.
Chris, you had something?
Yeah, just to build on that point, the stakes are low at the beginning, and it's a slow build. And with each X, we have certain stakes that are being involved. Like, this is a weird encounter to have your daughter in the house being weird like this. There's like a bubbliness still, though.
And
It's not
weird,
too
but naked.
intense. Yeah, right.
Casually
then
just naked.
you get to the second one and you're like, something's off here. And you start to dig. And again, remember, there's this mystery going on. Like we are to a degree also interrogating the exes from our own perspective as the audience and going like, could you have a son that you were not telling Bill about? Like, we're also doing the same thing Bill is, just with a little bit more like a step back to be able to observe everything. And so we get to the third and we're getting nothing. Like, we, the audience, also get nothing in the third with the third girlfriend.
We're very much seeing it through his eyes.
Correct.
In real time.
But at the same time, like, we also have our own unique experience watching it as the audience because we want the puzzle to be fixed. Like, we want to see the full picture. Like, that's what the director just really, really intelligently strings you along with, right? Just to keep you going, looking for clues in these very minute details. And we get stuffed at the third one. We get nothing. And so he creates that frustration and in it stakes without actually introducing anything stressful. And then we get to the last one. And if you don't mind, I'll just like carry us into Penny. The fact that this one is so short and we haven't gotten any hard answers yet, we are like, okay, it has to be this.
Right.
Right. And so what I love is how short and impactful we get that answer. And to bring it to the ex-girlfriend, to bring it to Penny, this ex has this hard exterior, right? This recluse, mystery, dark intensity to her as a person. And we get to see, finally, someone has legit vulnerability with Bill Murray, with Dawn, as having this tough exterior, which is like, what I always like to say is Angers is Sadness's bodyguard, right? And so she has this pent up anger. She was deeply hurt by Dawn.
Yeah.
That's what we find out. Like, she is so over Dawn at this point that she, to a degree, is aggressive with her boundary and says, get the F out of my life. Like, no, I closed that chapter. You've hurt me so badly. Get the hell out of here. What do you mean? Are you talking about these pink letters? And then we get like the typewriter and stuff.
The typewriter. Yes. We get the biggest clue the whole movie with her was that typewriter.
I thought that was so interesting. Someone else can take it from here, but
I wanted to add to that. I love that it was the shortest scene, the most aggressive ex that he talked to, and we get the most clues that we think are the clues that are going to lead us to the answer. And then he gets punched in the face, and then we cut to the next scene, and he's in his car, with the black eye and stuff. And I was like, oh, so he's not going to give us the answer now.
I think that's the thing with Jim Jarmusch, though. Like, that's a kind of a constant theme, and like possibly a trope of like a lot of Jim Jarmusch's films in general. Like, there's no clear answers for anything. Like, you look at the ending of
Just
Ghost
like in life.
Yeah, exactly.
He makes the audience the cuck. We don't get fully enjoy this. Like, we're just sitting here watching what? Like,
and I think it's great that like he relates to his audience in that sense that this is real life. This is what real life is about. Like, we don't get the answers all the time. We get enough to like satisfy. We don't get redemption like ever. A lot of times, we don't get like the that sort of walk off into the sunset situation.
Yeah,
like 95% of the time, 99% of the time, we don't get that, but we get what we need. And sometimes we have to rest our laurels on that, like rest our we rest on that answer that answer. Because if we don't, it'll just drive us nuts. And here's another interesting thing too. It's like, I think that like I don't want to like us to like forget about this. It's like there's different moments in the film, right, where you see a kid like on the bus, right, when you see the Calvin Klein model kid, and those two girls are like, oh, look at, but he's that kid is like very nonchalant, and you look at him, it's like, one, like is this the kid that's looking for me? Is it because he's kind of like he's like gauging if this kid is his son? But he also too, it's like almost like a bookmark, and like this is the start of my journey, right? And he's like trying to like find these things. So he kind of bookends it with like the other kid that was in like Scott Pilgrim that played the other guitar player at the very end. But anyways, at the very beginning of the film, you see this kid, and he like, I think Bill Murray is probably like, oh, this kid is kind of like me, kind of very like keeps to himself, like naturally attractive, like in the sense that it's like, the whole idea of like attract, don't chase type of deal. He's just like whatever, like.
I wanted to ask you about that scene, Alex. What did you interpret for those two girls that were on the bus while Bill Murray's riding on that bus, and he hears the two girls? They're talking about what they're gonna wear, like to the pool or something, and then they notice the guy you're talking about. They're like, "Oh, he's so cute." Like,
I think it was just kind of like a representation of Bill Murray when he was younger.
Okay.
And when he was younger, but it's also like I was saying, it could have been Bill Murray being like, "Oh, I wonder if this is the kid that is looking for me."
I was thinking the same thing. I was like, no way they would.
There's dual meaning. There can always be dual meanings to certain things. Like
is he gonna meet his son right here on this bus?
Because he even said that too at the very beginning. He's like, "What if I go on this journey and the kid who's trying to find me comes to my house and I'm not there?" And that was one of his concerns. Yeah. That's one of his concerns. When he returns and he comes back and he gets to the airport and he sees that kid that like that he also thinks might be his son. He's like, what's going on? Like, I wonder if this is my son. And then he just happens to come across him again at that restaurant that Winston and him always meet up at.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like that interesting thing. Is like, well, is this my son? And then he runs off, and because he gets weirded out. And then he's like what Lisa had mentioned at the very beginning of the show. She was like, you get this like, so that we don't get an answer. And then you see the kid who's kind of like, he sees Bill Murray too, and that kid is like, he kind of looks like Bill Murray.
Yeah.
And it looks like he's looking for something.
That's not the same kid from the budget bus, though. Are you saying that's the same character?
No, there's like 3 kids.
There's 3 kids. Okay.
There's like the kid on the Calvin Klein model looking kid.
Yeah. On the
then
budget.
There's the one where like Bill Murray buys the food.
And
then there's the third kid who's in the car with some other kid, and he's looking like as if he's like if they're driving around looking for something.
And
then Bill Murray's like, "Hey," and then they cut to the end.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the beautiful thing about like Jim Jarmusch is that the whole idea, like I said, you don't get clear answers, and that's life. And that's life.
Lisa, did you have more? Do you want to add to the kid on the bus or the girls on the bus?
So I was really curious, trying to figure out during the whole movie what time period, I know the year it was made, but what time period they were trying to portray. Because, I was like, gosh, it sort of looks like when the one teenage girl, the earrings and everything, like 80s-ish kind of time period. And then some of the decor in Bill Murray's home looked more 70s-ish. And then, and I was like trying to figure out, and I feel like it was purposely a little bit ambiguous, but I do think that the girls being on the bus was almost like to remind Bill Murray of the innocence of this. Like, he's going on this journey, he's got all these heavy things he's wrestling with, and it was just a moment to remind us of like, everybody was young at some point, and all we had on our plate for a lot of people when we're that young is worrying about what boy you're trying to dress up and impress.
Right.
And I think it was a moment of lightheartedness to sort of in a way pull us away from the heaviness of it. And then also I think it was a time period thing, because there are not, nowadays there's not a whole bunch of girls that are dressed like that and chit-chatting in that way on a bus. I think that was more time period-ish, 80s, maybe early 90s.
Well,
I remember thinking the same thing.
Well, it is very time stamped though, because it is they go like Bill Murray goes over to Winston's house and he's like helping him with the computer, and they're on the internet, so it's like definitely like that, like early internet, because like remember Winston's like, well, you could find so much information on the internet, you could find anything, right? But it's like this that old school like you're on the modem and it's all
he had printed directions from MapQuest. So that them instantly put me at like, oh, it's got to be like in the early 2000s. Like,
early.
I remember using that, and I was like,
I remember doing that on trips to San Diego.
I hated MapQuest. I hated it. Yeah. I won't get into this too much, but I got lost one time going from Palm Springs to Phoenix, where I was going to college in Tempe. because there was an accident on the freeway and they diverted all the traffic to some off-county highway, and it was nighttime, and I had to buy a freaking map. It wasn't MapQuest. It was an actual map book, kids, by the way, back in the day. And if I hadn't followed this one couple that was at a gas station, like I walked up to them, I was like, "Hey, are you guys going to Phoenix? Yeah. Can I follow you? Because I have no idea what I'm doing." And they're like, "Yeah, sure, that's fine." So I followed them.
That's the beauty of AAA, though. The beauty of AAA, you could go to AAA, and even today, still, you could get paper maps for free.
Oh,
Yeah, they would give you like a booklet that they would soft bind or whatever. But I mean, I was really interested, we talked about the theme of the pink all the way through.
Yeah.
And I sort of feel like it was the director's final kind of like, you're not going to get an answer when you see the little tie of pink on that kid's backpack. And he brings it up, and the kid is like clearly not going to talk about it. But he says it's from his mom. And then it's almost like that's when things go downhill. Quickly. And that's when I think I realized we're not going to get an answer to this.
Yeah.
We need to be okay with the big mystery. And I think, you've brought it up a couple times that's reality. Almost all the time in real life, we're not going to get an answer. It's not going to be a comfortable ending. And so I think that was kind of the final where I realized I'm not getting an answer to this.
And really quick, backtracking really quick to Tilda Swinton's character, the two guys in the trailer park with her, one of them is actor Chris Bauer, which if you guys have never seen The Wire, he plays Frank Spotka in season 2 of The Wire, which is one of my favorite shows of all time. I highly recommend you watch The Wire. If for nothing, watch it for Chris Bauer in season 2. He's amazing. And I saw him in this and I was like, he doesn't really have lines. And that was really quick, but no small parts for any actors. Chris, I believe you had something.
Yeah, as we're getting close to wrapping up this episode, I wanted to see if we can throw out a little question to everyone, because this movie is so great about being rooted in a very real reality. I can feel I could have felt like myself going through this whole experience, and nothing was out of the ordinary or too over the top, even in the weird spots. It was it felt very that would happen in real life. With us getting that real life ending where it's kind of ambiguous and we don't necessarily get our answers wrapped up nicely in a bow. If we could take a snapshot, what do you guys think happens with Dawn after this movie? So not a sequel, but if you could extend this and get a little snapshot into Dawn's life, what do you guys think happens to Dawn?
I want to say that he goes back to his house. He has some more wine, listens to some more Ethiopian jazz, talks to Winston a little bit, and then I want to say that his actual son that we never really see or know, at some point comes in and meets him. And that's just because I want that. I do in the back of my mind, if I'm to extend the story, that's my Hollywood ending. I want him to get that closure, damn it. I want him to have that closure. And who knows, thinking, maybe he lives with him and he gets to hang out with Winston and his kids too. I don't know. But
I was,
that's
as
my
you're
sappy.
talking about that, I was sort of thinking the same thing, pretty much,
right.
He does go back home, but maybe I'll be a little bit more exact with the type of wine, maybe a Chateauneuf de Pape or something, which is a red wine from the France.
What year?
France.
What year? Huh?
What year?
2006 is pretty good.
Yeah.
The 2013s as well.
A nice. What would you pair that with, Arnold?
That's so perfect.
With nice carrot.
maybe like a braised short rib or something, or with some celeriac and I don't know. Maybe gotta have some vegetable broccoli or green beans, but maybe a nice reduction using the Chateauneuf de Pape.
Ooh, now you're talking. I don't know what you're talking about, but now you're talking.
That way, the dishes, they kind of fuse together.
There you go.
Very
nice. It coalesces into a flavor explosion in your mouth. I think.
Now that I'm thinking about it, maybe the ending totally goes foodie.
Yeah,
and then,
exactly.
And then no, I don't know.
And you got to be playing some
Bill
Ethiopian
Murray becomes
jazz.
a chef.
Oh, yeah.
He becomes John Favreau in Chef.
Well, actually, no. He becomes an actor and he goes to Tokyo after this.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
okay.
See what I did there?
But he was already rich, though, so he didn't have
That's
to have...
true. He was already rich. Lisa, what do you think? What if you were to extend this ending and give you know, yeah. How would you see it? How would you see it in your mind?
So I feel really strongly that he goes back and he feels compelled to get a cat after, I mean, being through that experience. I
I could
think
see
that
that.
he gets a cat. And I'm joking, but I'm also like, I feel like for the companionship. And then I agree. The Hollywood side
Mm,
really wants to see that maybe in 5 years, in 8 years, after he's sort of forgotten about his journey and kind of resigns to the fact that he's never going to meet his son, then all of a sudden he has one of those, like in the movie Crash, one of those kind of chance meetings where it's like all of a sudden he meets his son in some really bizarre way. he
mm.
he did this long journey and couldn't find him, and then he just goes to the grocery store and drops something, and the kid picks it up, and there it is.
Which is not out of the realm of possibility, by the way. People meet in all kinds of crazy coincidences in life. Yeah. There's a married couple. Oh, sorry. I'll talk about that later. Go ahead, Alex.
My ending, like short term ending, would be just more so like even more depressing. he's a
Do tell.
he goes. I mean, I don't want to say depressing, but more so like he becomes more introspective about his journey, but also like why are these women? Why have all these women had all these different taking all these different directions in their lives? Why did I affect them so greatly? I mean, obviously, like
Maybe he writes a book about that.
possibly, I don't know. I would just see him like probably taking a time out on dating.
Yeah.
Like maybe
Yeah.
like he pump the brakes on like hurting any more people.
Yeah.
You
And
know.
by the way, I know we've talked about how Jim Jarmusch is kind of sort of on the fringes of Hollywood as a director, as a storyteller, but this movie does have a traditional plot structure, and Bill Murray's character Don does have a character arc, because in the beginning he's very like, I don't care, I'm not interested, blah blah blah, fine, I'll do it just to appease you, to Winston, and then at the end, he actually does want the answer, because when he meets the drifter kid, he obviously seems curious about him, and he goes and he buys him the food and the drink, and he's talking to him, and then he sees the pink ribbon, and then he's like, "Tell me about your mom," right? He's like very kind of escalated at that point. The kid's like, "Whoa, man, you're freaking me out," and then he takes off, and then he goes and chases him through the streets of whatever little town they're in, and then the kid's gone. That's it. That's the end of that arc. But oh, Don, he really wants to know. He wants that what we all want in life to a lot of things, right? Is that what did I say earlier? I can't even think of the word closure. He really wants that closure. And then he sees the random kid in the car who drives by him, and he just does he say something to him? Does the kid say something to Don? I feel like he just gives him a face, right? He's just like, the fuck are you doing, dude? Kind of face.
It seemed more like
mad
a
dog look.
Well, to me, it seemed more like a look of recognition, slight
Yeah.
recognition. Like he's like,
Okay.
And
yeah.
then-
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah. And when that happened, I didn't think that's probably his son. No, I thought, no, that's Bill Murray's reaching. He's reaching for something because he
but
lost.
I think that's the thing. He's
Yeah.
at that breaking point, and he's like kind of, isn't that typical of like anybody who's like looking for
Yeah.
answers, and they're kind of at a breaking point. They're like,
Yeah.
they'll find the answers. They'll cherry pick any sort of like message that they hear to like fit into like their own narrative, And then I think that's kind of what happens. Might have happened. Maybe it was his son. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. And
Yeah.
that's the beauty of like that this kind of like film.
You
It's
don't
like,
get all the answers
you don't get
all
the
the time.
answers. And it kind of like, and that's one of those things too. Is like, I love this kind of movie because you could go back and watch it because
Yeah.
they have breadcrumbs that leads you back to watching it
Yeah.
again.
I'm glad I watched it at this stage in my life. I don't know that I would have appreciated this movie in 2005. Because I was still a teenager technically, and I was like, I don't think I would have appreciated it. But now that I'm 20 years later,
when I watched this film, it was probably a year later, but it was kind of like I knew the ending of my marriage was happening
like in real, like your marriage,
in real life.
Oh,
In
real
real
life.
life.
Interesting.
I started to see it unfold in like different aspects and certain
Yeah.
things, and like I don't want to say like I was like, it's like I was saying earlier, it's kind of reaching, but at the same time you're kind of like you're looking at you start whenever you're trying to like find things to connect to, whether it be film or TV or literature or music, you kind of find these things that kind of like, what's going on with my own life. And
the right art will find you at the right time in your life.
yeah, and when I watched it, I kind of cherry picked it, but now looking back on it, like I didn't cherry pick the like to a bad way, but now that I like watching it again and with a better perspective, I'm like, wow, okay, this was kind of me, you know?
Yeah.
Like I did damage her in a way, but like, you know, maybe I don't know. I don't want to get into the weeds with that whole situation, but like there was also
it spoke
too.
to you because
It spoke to me.
what was
Yeah.
going on in your life at the time.
Yeah.
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 That's perfectly. Yeah. Chris.
Yeah, just to expand and not to like drill in deeper with you, Alex, but I think to Brian a little bit, whenever we have relationships that maybe they didn't work out, or there was a misconnection, or there was just we just didn't have the answers that we felt like we should have had towards the end of some of the relationships that we had or missed out on.
Absolutely.
In a way, we sometimes we look for those pink letters, right? In the sense of like,
Absolutely.
we're looking for anything. We're grasping at whether it be hope, maybe it's simply just an answer that we never got.
Sometimes it's also just connection. Sometimes connecting, knowing somebody has gone through the same thing, is kind of like a comfort in and of itself.
Cathartic in itself, yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, great round of discussion, gang. I think we did it. I think that was, great question, Chris. And did you want to answer your own question, Chris, by the way? If we get a peek into Don's life right after the end, and like, what do you see in your mind's eye?
Sure, I'm a hopeless romantic, but I do love toying with audiences as well. So I would have loved to see like a moment where, because we sort of see it in the middle of him going like, do I just give up on this? Like, what am I even doing? Like, I got a letter trying to about a kid. I'm like, am I actually gonna get these answers? I would love for him after that, like kind of like weird ending where he gets psyched up and gets his hopes up. I like to think that he comes back home and it just has like a very subtle nuanced thing of like him like essentially closing the chapter on this. Like if it happens, it happens. And then having him like in the next scene or like in a couple like a fast forward where he just has like a cute meet cute. And it's like, oh, did he learn anything from revisiting those relationships? And just like throwing a different type of question out there of like, does Don have the ability to have true character growth at this point, or is he just kind of set in his ways and he was just simply looking for answers because he was pushed to by Winston? Right?
Maybe he reconnects with Sherry.
Yeah.
You know, maybe him and Sherry get back together, and now he has the tools to make that relationship work, even though we don't know why it didn't work. Because again, this movie asks a lot of questions and doesn't always give us the answers. And it works. So, great guys. Well, yeah, I think we did it. I think we'll do a quick wrap up here. Obviously, we kind of already gave our sort of final thoughts with that question, but if any other final thoughts come to your mind, so obviously let us know. Alex, I'll start with you.
Jim Jarmusch is like one of my top favorite directors, up there with David Lynch, Tarantino. I do feel like the like going back to it, like the soundtrack is very underrated. There's that Marvin Gaye song, which I thought was really cool. There's actually the lyrics in it. You listen to the song. The song is called "I Want You," and it plays while he's sitting in his living room, kind of ruminating about the night, during the night before he's going to go on that mission. You know, and it's kind of like but the song is about like I want to love you, but I want to love you in the right way. And he wants. I think
did not catch that.
And I think that's the whole thing. That's like the foreshadowing and sort of like the tone of like where he wants to go, because he just had Julie Delpy walk out of his life. So and he knows that he messed up, and he knows now that he like the way he's been doing things as a romantic partner hasn't been the right way. And so like I think that going on this mission was sort of a reflection of like all this stuff that was going on, you know, that like and seeing it's like, and it's almost like he's going back to see where he went wrong. And that's where that whole like idea of Don Juan in a midlife crisis comes into play. And that Marvin Gaye song is like, I want to love you, but I want to love you in the right way. It's Don wanting to find love, but in the right way. And it's kind of like, and I think that what what does it mean to find love in the right way? Is it like to find his son and be like I could love this kid the right way he that he deserves to be loved as a father? Or is it him like finding love again, but finding romantic love and doing it the right way and doing right by these people, but also to himself? Because like ultimately it's a two-way street, and you have to like in your relationships they have to be authentic and communicate well, and and I think that he's come to that point in his life, or at least he's starting to get to that point in his life, and so those are my final thoughts. Of like that, I thought that Marvin Gaye song was such a beautiful like bookmark in that his whole journey. And if you if you watch it again or go listen to that song, it's a beautiful song, and it's like, man, it really tells the like what's to come, and like maybe what's going on in Don's head. So, and I gave on Letterboxd, I gave this a 4 out of 5.
Nice.
And you can find me at Daily Dares on all the socials. Go check out my the link tree on there, and go check out my Depop.
Thank you for that. Lisa, any final thoughts, and where can people find you? Any projects you want to talk about?
Yeah, so I would actually probably go back and rewatch it. It's funny because when I first started it, it was a slow start, but I really think that there was a theme of we talk about that midlife crisis, and we didn't even get to talk about he has these like flashback dreams when he goes to sleep on the plane and stuff that are sort of in these vivid colors, and they're blips, and I want to go back and look at what was the importance of the blips that they showed, and kind of do some mystery work, so that even though we don't find out at the end, I still want to find out. I want to figure it out, because there was a reason that they put those flashes in. And I think it's as somebody that is over the hill, essentially age wise for myself, it is sort of a reminder that we go back and we reflect on, did we do this right? Were we the best parent? Did we, give that relationship everything that we should have? And we start to go back and reflect on things that we've done in life, for sometimes good, sometimes not good. And so I think I think it's actually intrigued me to watch it again and go back and kind of find those other clues in those dreams, because there was a reason they put them in there. So I'm still I have a lot of question marks about it. I would give it a 4.5, just because I really, again, as an actor, looking at him just staring into space, there was so much expression. I want to go back and study it. I want to be able to portray that kind of expression in my face
I don't have
too.
to study it.
So
I live it. I'll sit up in bed and just stare into space like, what am I doing with my life? What is going on? Yeah.
well, I have to laugh because I did a audition for something, and no dialogue, and it was for Red Robin, and it was one of those where it says the burger comes out and you say wow without opening your eyes and with a slight expression on your on the corners of your mouth, and you sit in front of the camera and you're like, I don't know what that means. I don't know how I'm supposed to express that. And to watch Bill
For a
Murray
Red
sit
Robin
there.
commercial, no less.
And yeah, and to watch him sit there and do just that was amazing. I think that was really, it was a cool time period for me to watch this, because I agree, 20 years ago, I don't think I would have paid attention. I would have been like, So I definitely enjoyed it. I think I'll go back and relook at it. But you can find me at on all the socials, Instagram and everything, at Red Feather Girl 01. And I've got all kinds of exciting projects coming out. And Felina, my big mafia movie, is coming out in December. So as soon as I find out where, we'll put that out there.
Absolutely. By the way, big missed opportunity for Jim Jarmusch to not have all the diner scenes set at a Red Robin. Like, that would have really hit, I think. But not really found in a small town or wherever they filmed this movie. Chris, any final thoughts? Where can people find you?
Yeah, I think this is such an interesting movie in the sense of it's going to land so differently for so many different people, even with those people at different points in their lives, it's a completely different experience. And I think that this is not in the sense of like a rated R movie, but this is a adult movie. This is a movie for adults. This is not meant for like kids,
children,
adolescents, young adults. Like you need to be a full adult to get your mileage out of this movie.
I agree.
And the more experience in life that you have, I feel like it adds to it, whether that be in true lived in experience, or if you are a theater nerd or film nerd, you get to appreciate so many.
It's like a fine wine.
It truly is. Like you need to have those. Thank you for that. That's wonderful. The more that you have, whether it be knowledge or experience, the more you're going to get out of this movie, truly. And on top of that, there's this additional layer as well of it's got to be like the right time and mood and place in your life for this movie to hit. If you watching this on like your happiest day ever and you just want to come home and like continue the train, this is such a downer of a movie. Like this is going to stop and halt your whole day. But if it's like a moody little, like you're like, I'm confused, I'm feeling very like going through a lot of stuff, this movie is like a prime time movie for that sort of like ambiguous, like I'm just here to just, I don't even know, waste away. And then you watch this and you're like, wow, this is good. It's dirt, it's gritty, it's simple but nuanced. So on that end, I think it's like a 4.5. If you don't have any of that, it's a 1. Like this is a really horrific movie to a lot of people, I think.
I can see that.
So I'm gonna split the difference. I'm actually gonna give it a 3.5 because
perfect.
Like holy, I think that's where it's at.
Where can people find you?
You can find me at Milkman America everywhere that you can get milk at.
America. Arnold, we'll do a really quick final thought, and then what comes after that. Hit us with it.
I'm really, once again, I knew that when talking about this movie, my rating would go up. I just couldn't quite pinpoint it. It's very much, I mentioned about the wine, that I think that he probably would have had, which was a Chateauneuf de Pape, which was probably this, Chateauneuf de Pape, 2017.
Nice.
I've been saving it for a nice dinner,
a special occasion.
Are they a sponsor?
Are they a sponsor, Arnold?
Yeah, Arnold, are they sponsors? Yeah.
You should get on that, Arnold.
Alain
No,
Jumet.
no free pub. No free pub.
Alain Jumet. I'm gonna drink this one special.
No free pub. No free pub.
Arnold is our people are gonna talk to their people, right, Arnold?
They better be sending cases of this to each of us.
Oh yeah. Denver,
because
Seattle, San Diego.
I love Chateauneuf de Pape. I love Southern Rhone wines. They're the type where when you pop it and you drink it, you're like, this it's very tight. But I knew that there's more if you let it breathe and then you let it open up, and then a lot more of the nuances come through. And especially if you share it and you have other people and you talk about it like this podcast.
Right. This movie.
We give it time. You swirl it, let it aerate a little bit more. You can kind of speed it up if you use those little aerator
you
things.
You swirl it like your hips.
You should have been a sommelier, Arnold.
With the
you should have been a sommelier, bro.
You swirl that and swirl the hips, kind of.
I don't know you were into wine.
Oh yeah,
that's interesting.
Around the time that this movie was made is when I really started to get into wine.
Yeah.
And
we should do Sideways on this movie.
Didn't we do it? No,
we haven't.
No, we did not.
Fucking Merlot.
We need to do. That's such a good movie.
So,
but anyways,
what I'm gonna wrap up with many of the great wines, and especially the Chateauneuf de Papes that I've had, when you give it time to breathe, and just like this movie, it gets even better, and it gets even better with food. But all of that to say that after talking about this last night, going to sleep, I was thinking like 2.5 for me because of how slow it was. But then I never really felt, as we're talking about, like, just like a lot of the really quiet moments, he really does express a lot just with his face, which is, that's a talent, and that's hard to do. And not everybody can do it very well. He did it very well. And I feel like after this, I'd have to bump it up to a 4. I think, the way how he ended the movie, with the kid running away,
Yeah.
and then there was a moment as the car passed by and he was driving by. I just felt that, like, I felt like, oh, I think I even said it out loud. I was like, that's it. That's gonna be it. That's it. And then the movie just cuts black. Then it ended. I was like, that was a perfect ending to me, of how it just felt like it was right. Maybe
Thank
it was
you.
also I was a little bit tired, but
And let's talk about that, Arnold. We even have a whole segment dedicated to this, Arnold. It's called the Arnold Snooze-o-meter. Ah, there it is, Arnold. And you shared a picture that Carla took of you with your eyes getting a little dozy Arnold there.
this old watch.
So yeah. Well, tell us. Let's get into it. What is your snooze-o-meter ranking?
Well, I give it a 1Z.
Oh wow,
1Z.
That's
because
amazing.
I think, for a lot of people, the pace of the movie is slow.
Yeah.
But like you had mentioned, Chris, this is an adult, like a grown-up movie, not like an X-rated.
Right.
It
We got
needs
that.
like a 25 plus old male where your brain's fully developed. I don't know, women, theirs is probably developed when they're 16 or something.
Yeah.
But like you need to have really your head on. So like maybe eat some lion's mane or take some lion's mane powder.
You mean your lion's mane?
You're looking at lion's manes?
Yeah.
No, it's a mushroom. I would totally grab it from the
No,
kitchen
don't
for
get
you.
it. Please don't. Please don't.
Well,
No,
we can shout out to
No, we're
other
not. We're
episodes
not giving no
when
free
I
pub.
when
No
I
free
did.
pub. Sorry.
Yeah.
from
Unless they
Four,
send us some tote bags.
Four Sigmatic is the brand. Shout out
Okay.
to Four Sigmatic.
Yeah,
for,
let me get
for
some
that,
Four Sigmatic stickers.
Hashtag
Maybe I'll shout them
Four
out.
Sigmatic.
Give me some T-shirts. Maybe a beanie.
Would love
But
it.
that's not a bad snooze meter ranking, Arnold. So
Yeah.
there you go.
And it was mostly me. I was tired, and so
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think because of the slowness, that was my snooze meter rating.
Thank you for that.
But always,
What about
as
your
always.
letterbox?
Oh yeah.
Oh, letterbox.
He said 4.
Did you say 4?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
unequally
you
go-
did say 4. You did say 4.
On
Sorry.
his hypothetical letterbox.
the letterbox he never uses.
The chat is saying like
Oh
otherwise.
yeah, they've been quiet
But
today.
I don't want to bring them up because
That's okay.
they're talking about like,
Yeah.
those are the smoothest legs. Which leg was better? The one at the beginning, the one in the airport. Gosh, man, they're like such.
That
pervs.
chat is very
Wild,
spicy chat.
wild. Yeah,
Thanks
and
for
I
that,
don't want to
Arnold.
talk about them. Last but not least, you, Adrian, Mr. EOOTZ too big. What's your final thoughts?
Well, thank you for that, Arnold. So yeah, I'll just read my letterbox review, which I'm about this movie. Bill Murray really proved himself as a comedy legend, but this film shows he could have been as just as successful, if not more so, in dramatic roles. That said, this movie is still genuinely funny. Jeffrey Wright bookends the story as Don Johnston's passionate and humorous friend and neighbor, who ultimately sets the plot in motion. There's a fantastic scene in which Don, Bill Murray, tells him to drop the subject, and the two exchange a side-eye glance that makes it clear that neither of them has any intention of letting it go. It's a small but a significant moment, elevated by the excellent performances from both Murray and Wright. I really enjoyed following Don's journey as he visits each of his former lovers, trying to determine which one sent the mysterious letter claiming that he has a son he never knew existed. Each encounter becomes shorter than the last, with the final visit featuring Tilda Swinton in a role that's very small but memorable, offering the strongest clues about Don's son without ever providing definitive answers. The clues are there, but certainty remains elusive. And then there's a final act where Don returns home, bruised, black-eyed, and empty-handed, only to cross paths with a mysterious drifter, who may in fact be his son. Yet once again, the film refuses to offer confirmation, despite hinting heavily at the possibility. Director Jim Jarmusch consistently teases the audience without ever fully resolving the mystery. Instead, he leaves us with lingering questions that invite reflection, not just about the film's central mystery, but about our own lives and the people who have drifted in and out of them. I think that's what this story is ultimately about. Life is messy, people enter and leave our lives, often without closure, and we are left to live with unanswered questions. I deeply appreciate how this film embraces that reality rather than forcing a neat resolution. Overall, this is a thoughtful, grounded film that lingers long after it ends, encouraging you to reflect on the mysteries in your own life. And for that reason, I give this movie 4 stars out of 5 on Letterboxd. You can find me on Letterboxd at Beats Too Big. You can find the show everywhere else, on Blue Sky, we're on Threads, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, TikTok. Follow our website, everseenitpodcast.com. Email us, podcast.everseenit@gmail.com. You can also subscribe to us, video versions now on Spotify and YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts from. Thanks to Mr. Kyle Mapson of Burn Cycle for the intro and outro music. You can follow Kyle on Instagram at selfies_food_and_pets. Thanks to Mr. HLP for the Arnold Snooze and Meter music. Thanks to all the sponsors that came in. Thanks to Arnold tonight as well. And yeah, any final thoughts from the gang? No? Okay.
Just silent moments, just like Bill Murray, just like Don Johnston.
Scene.
I'm gonna practice the brow furrow.
Yeah, you should.
Let's all do a brow.
Yeah, that's my best brow. Chris, I love yours. Yeah.